Hello and welcome back to episode 3 of Can I Kick It, a series all about freestyle foot bags. Last episode, Ivan and I helped you buy your first foot bag, but now that you own it, how do you actually take care of it? Like all sports equipment, your foot bags need proper care, so today on Passback we're going to go over the do's and don'ts of foot bag ownership that will help them live a long and healthy life. Let's start with the things you should avoid doing with your bags that will most certainly shorten their lifespan. First, don't ever do that toe scrape pop-up that you used to do back in hack circles. It's fine to do with your cheaper bags that have thicker fabrics, but with your good bags, you're just asking to tear a hole in them. Similarly, you should also be careful with toe scooping, especially on rougher surfaces, as this could also cause the fabric to wear out quicker. A lot of players are okay doing this with their bags, but personally I usually avoid it, so it's really up to you. Next, be careful playing and handling your bags when they're wet, as some fabrics become less durable and more likely to rip. Finally, you should refrain from kicking too hard, throwing your bags against the wall, stomping on them, or generally being overly rough with them, which could cause the stitch to break and open up a hole. Now, let's move on to how to properly care for your bags. Oftentimes when you buy a new bag, the material and stitching will be stiff and you have to go through a break-in period before the bag is playable to its full potential. The best way to break in a bag is to go through a cycle of playing with it and then washing it after every session, and we'll talk about how to wash a bag in just a minute. Any kind of play will help further the bag's break-in, but kicking is the most effective. A good tactic in this regard is to warm up for a session with your new bag with a lot of kicks, then switch to an already broken-in bag for the rest of it. Other ways to break in a bag are by using your hands manually. One method is to hold the bag in your fingers and poke at it and rotate it. And another is to grab a chunk of material, let the fill drop down, and snap back and forth, which is like kicking but in overdrive. This one is a little harder in the stitches, so be more careful. So the first thing to know about washing a foot bag is knowing when to wash it. As mentioned with a new bag, in order to speed up the break-in process, you should wash it every session or so. However, once a bag is broken in, it really only needs to be washed when it gets dirty, crusty, and generally harder to play with. Now, I myself did not know how to properly wash a bag until a few years ago, and I also recently learned that there is more than one longtime player out there who does not wash their bags. At all. So, we're going to teach all you filthy animals out there how to do it properly. First, get your hands and the bag wet. For bags with cheaper dyed fabrics, you should use cold water to prevent the colors from running, but with Ultra Suede, you should be okay using either cold or warm water. The secret key to washing your bags is to use bar soap. If you use liquid soap, I guarantee you will be washing it out for the rest of your life, and playing with a dry, soapy bag is an awful experience. Get your hands lathered up, then gently roll the bag through your hands to transfer the soap, again being careful with the wet material. Run under the water and squeeze gently to rinse out the soap, and repeat this process until the water is coming out completely clear and free of soap, which should take about 5 to 15 squeezes depending on how dirty the bag is. And again, that's only if you're using bar soap. With liquid soap, it'll be about 9,000 squeezes. If the bag is still dirty even after the soap is washed out, repeat the whole process until you're satisfied with its cleanliness. Once the bag is clean, gently use a towel to dry off excess water, then toss it in a spot out of the sun to dry for the rest of the day. Traveling with bags to and from sessions is pretty simple. It's totally fine to throw them in your pocket, a glasses case, even just a pocket of your bag, as long as they won't get stretched by something else in there. Traveling through an airport can be a little more complicated because you might get stopped at security and asked about the bags in general and what's inside them. I've never really had a problem with this once I explained what they were, but I know Ivan has a little more involved experience, so I'll let him talk about that.
As a stitcher, I tend to bring quite a few foot bags to events I go to, and this gets a little bit complicated when it comes to getting them through airport security. I find that putting them in a separate Ziploc bag and taking them in my carry-on tends to work best. This way I can pull them out and put them in a separate little bin to go through the X-ray scanners. Of course, they will look like dense blobs on the scanner screens as the fill is metal, so you'll likely have to explain what they are and what you do with them, but in general that can be kind of fun in itself. It's best to avoid saying that they are filled with shot or pellets, as I have had them confiscated before when the security agents thought it was full of ammunition. Small metal balls or discs generally gets the nod of approval though. It's genuinely a horrible feeling showing up to a tournament with 10 empty footbag shells because the TSA thought the filler might be a dangerous weapon. I've also had them swabbed for chemical analysis, so it makes sense to wash the bags before you pack them, and let them dry for a day or two so that there's less of a chance for them to find any sort of weird substances on them. For the most part, these issues only come up when I bring 5 or more foot bags with me, so you're likely not to have any issues, but it's better to be prepared.
No matter how well you treat your bags, the more and more you play with them, the more likely they are to develop a hole and leak fill. When a hole develops, you have a couple of options for repairs depending on the severity. A hole in the middle of a panel can be patched quickly with medical tape. But if a stitch pops to leave a panel wide open, you don't have any options other than to re-sew it. If the bag has lost a significant amount of filler, you may also want to replace it with extra you have on hand or transfer some from a different bag. In order to refill a bag, you'll first have to figure out if it has a bleed hole, which is a gap between two panels where there aren't any stitches. On a 32 panel, this is usually between the short sides of the hex panels. If your bag does have a bleed hole, you can carefully widen it with a pencil, then insert a funnel or a makeshift funnel as I did, at which point you can easily dump fill out or in until the bag you're refilling is back to the desired weight. However, no matter how perfectly you treat them, eventually every footbag reaches the end of its life where the material is simply worn out and it's no longer playable. It depends on how much you play with it, the surfaces you play on, and the bag itself, but generally a well cared for footbag should get you through a full season of playing, which is somewhere within a year. As for exactly when it's time to call it quits, it's really up to you to feel out when the bag is no longer giving you the same quality of play as it once did. Whenever you decide that time comes, throw it on a shelf, let it become an heirloom of your career, then move on to the next one. It's always a good idea to have a couple of bags that you're actively playing with, at least one that you're doing the bulk of your playing with, and at least one that you're breaking in. Even though you will eventually retire all of your favorite footbags, with the care tactics we covered today, they should live a nice long life and help you hit many tricks and combos. That concludes episode 3 of Can I Kick It? Stick around for the 4th and final episode where Ivan and I will discuss dedicated stitchers in the freestyle footbag community, which is where you find all of the best professional custom-made bags. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.